Hi everyone, it's Tom with the LEC preview of the second week of the LEC Summer Split playoffs. We are going into the final stages where more teams will be eliminated and the final world spot will also be locked in this weekend. So that's going to be exciting. Let's just go over the games that are going to be played and share what I think is going to be the outcome. Now, as a heads up, there are going to be many 50-50s in my opinion. It's just so very close. The LEC is very exciting in that regard, I think. So, yeah, we kick off on Friday with obviously the lower bracket clash between Fnatic and Misfits. Misfits who had a very good weekend, almost taking down Rogue, and they probably actually should have taken down Rogue given the state of that fifth game. But Fnatic, I don't know, I wouldn't say they won convincingly against Vitality. I think their playstyle just worked well enough against Vitality, just a tiny bit better. Obviously also going to a fifth game, but in much less of a clean fashion, I think. I do think that this series is probably going to be the easiest to predict of the entire weekend because I just don't see Fnatic leveling up to rise to Misfits' level. Misfits has played meticulously, they have played clean, and I think it's time to put some serious respect on their name. I think that they are very good at adapting, and what we've seen so far from them against Fnatic and against other more aggressive teams is that they can soak up that aggression, they can adapt, they can pivot accordingly, and I think that is something that they're going to be able to do against Fnatic as well. Now, I don't want to say it's going to be a 3-0 because that might be a bit too harsh. There might be a scenario where Fnatic pulls ahead in the early game well enough in order for them to snowball. So I think it's going to be a 3-1 for Misfits in this opening series. But yeah, for me, just the top side of Misfits is so incredibly strong. The bot side of Fnatic is obviously very good, and we see that they get a lot of attention. But I do think that overall, if we look at the strength of the top side of Misfits compared to that of Fnatic, and also how stable Misfits is in the later stages of the game, I don't think they're going to have too much trouble with Fnatic. But I'm ready to be surprised by Fnatic because they have pulled out of clutch situations before in previous years. So on Saturday, we have the upper bracket finals between Mad Lions and Rogue, a rematch of the spring finals. It's obviously a very exciting one, and there's a pretty high stakes because the winner goes to the grand finals directly, and with that secures at least a second seed, meaning they don't have to go through the playing stage at Worlds. Now, in this series, I think that many people might say, oh, Mad Lions dominantly defeated G2. Rogue had trouble with Misfits, so Mad Lions must be big favorites. Well, I do think Mad Lions is favored in this series. I do think that overall they have more of that clutch factor that Rogue has. Rogue has maybe the opposite, maybe more of a choke factor. And I think that for them, in this series, you will have to see that all the team members need to step up on Rogue in order to carry this, because Mad Lions, as we've seen in their series against G2 and towards the later stages as well, in that in the regular split, I think towards the end you could just see that Mad Lions was getting it together. And when Mad Lions gets it together, it doesn't matter what state of the game they were in. They showed it against G2 as well. They were far behind, but they knew exactly how to pressure themselves back into the map. They knew exactly which points to pressure on the map and on G2 specifically in order to climb back into the game and eventually win games that G2 by all means should have won. So I think for Mad Lions, they have the upper hand. For Rogue, what I want to see is a clean early game into a clean mid game, because Rogue can play a very dominant early game. That's been the trend so far this entire split, where they get huge gold leads. Against Misfits in game 5 in particular, that wasn't the case. They started getting nervous. They started making shaky decisions. So I think given the track record, you should give Mad Lions the upper hand. I still think it's going to be a 5-game series, and I still think that Rogue obviously has a very good chance of winning it as well. It's not going to be like, okay, 70% that Mad Lions wins the series against 30 for Rogue. I think it's much closer than that. I'd maybe say 55 for Mad Lions against a 45 for Rogue. So it's very reasonable that Mad Lions clutches it out. I think for G2 in order to win for Rogue in order to win, what they really need to focus on is making sure that the top side goes well, which was kind of a fumble in game 2 and game 4 against Misfits. Ensure that the top lane goes well, because Armut, if he is on the comfort champion, he plays Gnar very well, he plays Jace pretty well, he plays Wukong. You cannot realistically ban all 3 of those, and if you do, you're gonna leave some very powerful picks open to Mad Lions otherwise. Make sure he doesn't get away with the lane, because if he does, as we've seen, he can put on very good performances. And if he doesn't, he's a pretty big liability for Mad Lions. So I think that's where their weak point is. And I'd like to see Rogue attack that pretty aggressively, because Inspired, he likes to path towards top. So who knows how that goes. Overall, again, as I said, I think Mad Lions is favored here. And then we go to Sunday, which, according to my prediction, would be G2 versus Misfits for the final spot. I'll also go over the G2 versus Fnatic possibility in case that happens. I think G2 versus Misfits is maybe the closest scenario that there will be in this entire weekend, because I think Misfits have been pretty underrated still. And I just think that they are a cleaner team than G2 is. G2 has probably a higher ceiling with all these players that they have, but Misfits is just cleaner. Overall, as a team, they play together better, they set up for objectives better, they play around the map better than G2 does. And G2, they're good, they're not bad. We've seen it in game 1 versus Mad Lions, where they just got a big lead in the top lane and snowballed that throughout the entire game. But they are not playing together as a team they should be playing as. And I'm not sure if they're going to have that fixed in time. So I think that if Misfits ends up against G2, I would probably favor Misfits in this case. Now, G2 is also a team that has pulled it together. You know, that it is a team that when the lower bracket hits, when they lose in the best of 5, they get that wake-up call, and they all of a sudden see that super dominant shape again. And we have seen what the peak is of G2. We have seen it in the final weeks of the regular split. But, you know, they are an uncertainty, and so far Misfits has been a certainty. And if I weigh those up against each other, I would probably favor Misfits, and it's by the narrowest of margins, right? It's so close. It's so close. But yeah, I think that's just how these teams stack up at the moment. That Misfits is just clean on, let's say, an A-tier level. G2, if they play at their peak level, they're S-tier, but most of the time they're not, and then they're B-tier. So, you know, if I weigh those up against each other, I'm gonna have to go with Misfits as a favorite here. Hopefully a 5-game series, but who knows? I think Misfits is really really good compared to what most people thought they would be at this point in the split. And then let's also talk about the possibility of G2 versus Fnatic, which would obviously be the most dramatic spot that the LEC could be in, because yeah, it's the two teams that always go to Worlds fighting for the final World spot. And I think that in this case, G2 will win pretty easily, because while Fnatic has obviously done well against G2 in the regular split, those were best of ones, and G2 was still finding its footing. I do think that the shape G2 is in at the moment, they will very easily recognize what Fnatic's game plan is, which is pretty one-dimensional, and they can play well into that. And I do think that overall, if you look at how the lanes stack up in a G2 versus Fnatic scenario, I would say G2 is just a bit more favored. As a team play, maybe Fnatic is a bit better, but I do think that G2 is a better jungler by far and has a better mid laner. Bot lane I would probably give to Fnatic, and in the top lane it's a bit flippy because Wunder doesn't get a lot of attention and he has not been playing well as well. Adam, on the other hand, is maybe a bit too excited a few times, gets a bit over aggressive, but also has a bit of carry potential. So maybe that's even. But mid jungle is just very important in the game at the moment, and since G2 is just better at that, I think that they will take the series against Fnatic. I would say like a 3-1. And to give a prediction, Misfits versus G2, if that happens, I would say a 3-2 for Misfit, or maybe even a 3-1. I think they're really ahead of G2 when it comes to the average level of performance. So those are my predictions. Let me know in the comments below what you think is going to happen between these teams. And if you agree, if you disagree, what do you think the strengths and weaknesses of each team are? And I'll be back as usual on Tuesday this time with the LEC recap. I probably will upload an interview on Monday already, but LEC recaps just take a bit more energy. And as I said in my last recap video on studio days, after studio days, I'm just very, very excited, much more excited than I anticipated. And given that coming weekend I'll be in the studio again for 3 days, I'm probably gonna be very tired on Monday, so I'll only have the energy to make a quick edit for a video interview. But look forward to that. If you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more content.